Okay, it's time for me to have a bit of a bash at some of this bed. I've got myself a reasonable edge down here just so I can see where I'm going. I'm going to cut that edge there. You can see that the bank runs along the path. I'm going to try and keep that sort of width all the way down. But the main job is turning this over, getting down to the clay pan and removing. You can see how all this bindweed has been revealed by the rain, and I've also got some roots in here as well. So I'm going to start at this end, work my way back and just see what it looks like once I've given it a bit of a going over. Let's give you a quick summary of what I think we've got here. So that's a 2 foot, probably 18-inch trench that I've dug, and out of that small area, that is the weed root that has come out quite a lot, and a little bit of rubbish and a whole bunch of stones. So if you look down here, you can see the clay pan, and it's an orange clay, and that gives you about 18 inches of soil. So the way I dig this is pretty much a big effort, but it is the cleanest way of conditioning the soil. Dig myself a trench like this, take the weed out as I go along, and then I'll backfill the mound that I've created into this trench and then start the next trench. And gradually I get to the point where I can throw the mound back up onto an area that I've already worked on. And that makes the whole process a lot easier as I go forward. But it's always a bit of a pain to start with, but must be done. Well, that was a quick cut from my digging exploits to another day. And well, it's a soaker, and I thought today I'd have a quick look at that clay trench just to see what's happened since it's got really soaking wet. So let's go and have a look. And today I've got a delivery of manure, which I'm not going to film because I've done that a lot, but I've got to get it in. Let's have a look over this fence. Wow, strangely it's sort of smoothed out on its own. Fantastic. And it's certainly looking solid and dense. Hopefully it'll do the job. Right, just going to go down and check that everything's ready for taking in my delivery. The ground is super slippery, so I'm going to need to be really careful today. But needs must. And one thing I am going to try today is putting some water on this heap. A number of you have suggested it, and I think you're right. I think, strangely enough, it was too wet to start with, and now it's probably a bit dry. So I will have the covers off that and add a couple of watering cans of water into it and see if we can get the temperature moving. So it's not been that long since I had a fill up on my compost bins, so everything today is going in there, and I'll move that all in and show you what it looks like when I'm finished. There's also been a lot of concern about what I'm going to do with this, because it is a lot of clay, and when I spread that and get it even, then it might well form a bit of a cap on top of the soil, which could result in some pooling of water. So it's a point very well made, and I'm going to give that some thought. It's a challenge, but these things, they're sent to try us. What I am sure about is I'm glad I've moved it, and thank you to everybody for your support for my videos changing the raspberry bed. Right, well, the weather tomorrow is going to be nice, but I've got other things to do, so got to make the most of today. That wasn't so pleasant, but we got there in the end, and I'll be grateful for all this effort when it gets to the back end of this year and this is all turned into compost. So there's the pile, and I'm just going to cover it up so that I keep the heat in. And these are the last of my various bits and bobs of covers, but it all counts. And I'll put a bit of carpet on top. I don't like using carpet, but it does weigh nice and heavy when it gets a bit damp. So we'll stick that over and above all this underlay. It's a bit like a patchwork quilt, but it'll do the job. There we go. Okay, so on to warming up this compost heap that just won't fire up. And I'm going to add some water, a couple of watering cans. I'll show you what I'm going to do. Okay, let's get the covers off of this and just see what's required. So this heap has been as low as 20 degrees. It picked up recently when I added some urine soaked horse manure, with obviously the manure being activated by the urine. And let's just take the temperature now. I'll plunge that in there. There we go. Also take off these other covers, and this is warm to the touch, this carpet, so that's encouraging. And it may be that we've got different temperatures in different places. So at the moment that's heading for 36, 38, which isn't bad. I'm just going to plunge it in over there where it felt warm, and it's holding the temperature. So what I'm going to do is just rough up this surface. Put the thermometer over there. I need something to rough it up with. Right, just take this. I just want to break this surface up. I can feel the heat now because I want the water to penetrate it. And I'm also not going to use a rose on the watering can because that will just spread the moisture and it will lie on the surface. That's definitely heating up now. In fact, I'm going to take its temperature again and see what it's like. Now I can get down a little bit lower. So the idea of getting the temperature up in a compost heap like this is to kill the weed seed. Otherwise, when it turns into compost and you use it next year, you find you do get a flush of weeds. So it's really important to get that temperature up. And at the moment, yeah, it's sitting in and around 36 to 38. So we want it a bit higher than that, although it is doing well. So as I say, no rose, and just pour on. In this case, I'm going to put 2 watering cans of water on this, evenly spread, and hopefully that will be enough to get this going a bit further. And I've got some hope now that the temperature's starting to pick up. That's very encouraging. And we'll see. I'll take temperatures again over the next couple of days and I'll let you know. Well, I've always said that my channel is about my allotment journey, and it certainly doesn't mean that I am any expert. I'm just taking you along with me. And the reason I say that is because quite a few people pointed out that when I was planting my apple tree and my plum tree, I would have benefited from soaking the roots in a bucket, probably for 24 hours. And of course, they're absolutely right. And in hindsight, I think that's what I should have done. But they're in now, and hopefully the soil is pretty damp and they'll do just fine. But if you're planting apple trees or plum trees, just make sure that you soak yours before you plant them. Alright, pick up that trowel that's been left out. The other thing that I learned from a subscriber is that plum trees benefit from pollination by a different variety of plums. I never knew that. That's fantastic to learn. And I do have a relatively close by Victoria plum near these opal plums, so fingers crossed that'll all work out. Right, I'm going to test temperatures because I do enjoy that, as you know. I can tell you that I learn an awful lot from viewers and subscribers, and hopefully it gets passed on so that everyone benefits. But it's all about learning. That's the fun of it. Right, this is the one. This is what I want to make sure is lifting in temperature. So it's a bit of a moment of truth. Move that brick out of the way. Now I think we got up to 38, which is still in the red zone. So I'm hoping we're going to go past that. Well, it's slowly climbing into the 30s, so I don't know. Doesn't look like it. So we've added manure that is soaked with urine from the horses, and that didn't seem to kick-start it. And I've added 2 watering cans full of water, and at the moment we're at 31, 32 degrees C. So jury's out on this one. It's certainly feeling warm when you lift the cover, but not really doing what it's supposed to do. Hopefully it'll climb over the next few days. It's supposed to rain today, so I'm going to get on and dig another strip of my raspberry bed. It's one of those jobs that's not particularly interesting, but it's one that's got to keep going because it won't be long before I need to get those raspberries back in the ground because they'll start to shoot. So here we are. I've got that mound of soil which I'm just going to push back in and then hopefully take out another strip. Got to get on. Well, believe it or not, that's the hardest bit. It gets easier from here on in, and that's because once you've created this mound to your left, or at least with my method, then I can go down strip by strip, and as I'm clearing the weed out, so the soil is going back on the mound and the mound goes all the way down with me, and then when I get to the end I can bring it all back and level it. And I'll do this in bite-sized chunks because that would just be impossible. But I have broken the back of this edge, and it does help once you got that mound and you can move over. Right, I think that's my exercise for this morning. Just one more thing to show you before I go, and it's good news. Okay, so into the polytunnel. I hope you're enjoying this, you chicks, because it's not for a lot longer. You'll have seen me split cabbage the other day and put it into the chicken runs, and this is what's left of that cabbage. They do love it. Right, so we've been down to -5 in here, and I sowed these, well, leeks just a little while back, and some onions, and I know that people were a bit skeptical as to whether it was too soon because it was so cold, or whether in fact they would germinate. So I've got good news, let me show you. So these are the leeks, and hopefully you can see that they're all poking their heads up. That's a weed, which is a product of mixing in some of the soil that the mole's excavated, but that's easy enough to pull out, and I'll just keep doing that whenever I see it. They're tiny and they're not a problem, but good germination. And we'll have a look at these. So this is Globo onion, exactly the same, and a couple of weeds there which we can take out. There's a couple there. So they've all germinated well, and they'll be so much better in my opinion for having grown outside, because they'll never get lanky, and temperature wise there's never a shock because they've always grown outside. And this is Zebrune, and they've germinated well, and I'll just try and get them as much light as possible now, because they are looking a wee bit yellow, those, but they tend to when they come out. Here we've got Elsa Craig, and again a couple of little weeds from the compost, but nothing to worry about, and they're germinating nicely, just getting their heads above the soil level, and they'll come on just fine. And then those are Bedfordshire Champion, and they too have germinated without any problem at all. Now, I've grown onions indoors in a propagator for a long time, and gradually, season by season, I'm finding that the need to grow indoors is diminishing, such that this year I'm not growing anything indoors. And the big risk I have, unfortunately, is peppers, because you can't grow peppers unless you get them going early and they've got some heat. But I think that is just fine. Rather positive note, germination starting. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, then why not like and subscribe. And if you want to get my uploads, every Sunday and every Wednesday at 8 PM. Good times.